episode of Surviving the Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And once again, it is not just a tagline. It is our reality. You guys are in for a treat again as we discuss a really difficult story here. The big question of the day today I'm going to ask these guys is on the thumbnail, is right here. Is this shooter playing games? You'll see between the two photos, those are the two newest photos. There is now monopoly money. So this thing is taking on a Netflix-esque aura, and it's got some movie elements here. Why would they find monopoly money in this person's, and I say person because there's a bunch of people out there who believe that this is a woman potentially. So we're going to talk about that as well. Been a lot of developments over the weekend, which is why we're coming to you on a Sunday, and I'm going to get right into the introductions, and then I'd love for you guys to be a big part of this today. Anyone in the chat who is cheering the murder of a CEO of a company is going to get booted out. I understand people don't like the healthcare system, and I'm with you on that. I think it stinks, needs a lot of work. I've gone through a lot of the same issues, being denied healthcare, denied medications. No one deserves to die or that. This guy's got 2 sons and a wife. So if you are on here doing that, I'm kicking your ass out. How's that sound? It's Sunday, and I ain't got tolerance for it. All right. Welcoming into the best guests den today, Rob D'Amico. You guys know him. He's a friend of the show, a friend of mine on here frequently. 39 years, both the military and as a retired FBI special agent. And he's one of those FBI agents that was doing some really crazy stuff. Some sit in the office. Other guys go to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia. And that was Rob D'Amico. Served several tours overseas and was chasing Somali pirates. So there you go. Next up, new to the show, Rich Kaprowski, first time here, 30 years with the NYPD, started off in the 25 precinct. They call it the 25, I'm sure, on patrol for 4 years, then went to the anti-crime unit for 3 years, transferred to the 25th precinct detective squad, where he was there for 13 years doing aggravated harassment, homicides, and everything in between. And last but not least, as you see behind him, is Tom Smith, the Chief Operating Officer of Impact Solutions, which is an alternate solution to pepper spray. But for our purposes, more importantly, he is retired NYPD and the co-host of the podcast Gold Shields, which you see behind him. So please check out Gold Shield. So Rob D'Amico, to you first. There was news pretty much right after we did our Friday show that I did with Phil and Scott. And Scott is retired FBI. Phil, America's most respected detective with over 400 homicides investigated with a 96% clearance rate. After that show basically became known in the news that that this suspect had been ID'd. But Rob D'Amico, this is apparently still coming from the current embattled mayor of New York City, who's former NYPD, Mayor Adams, who said that the net, is basically tightening. The noose, whatever analogy you want to use, is tightening around this shooter. But I don't believe that anyone from NYPD has officially come out and said they've got an ID on the suspect, unless I just haven't heard this. But Rob, how important would it be if they do have a name, but they still don't have their guy?
It'd obviously be huge, but I never trust when a politician says something. If a police spokesman said something, I would believe it. But then there's also, are they saying that to put pressure on them and they don't have a name? Because if you're trying to hide it, that you have the name, you're not going to say it. So there's games going on, but when a politician says it, he just can't keep his mouth shut, so to speak. or he's being hopeful. So I don't know what it is with that, because if you have the name and you don't want to release it, there's a reason for that. And by saying you have the name, that's again, it could be putting, if they don't have a name and said they did, I think it could be putting pressure, thinking that, oh, they're coming in type of thing. But since it didn't come from the police, I don't put much on it. It's coming from one person. But again, I think if they had a name, they're still going to have dual parallel investigations, because if you have a name, you're going to go methodical. You're going to start talking to all the people he knows, where he lives. You're going to do search warrants on the house, the any social media you can find. But you're also going to be looking for, because that's not, if he's hiding, it's not going to lead you to him. So you're still going out with that public and saying, hey, this is the guy. That's why all those pictures are going out, for some help from the public. So I think if they have it, they're running those, typical investigation things on the name and everything. And they're also doing the, hey, just because we know who he is doesn't mean we know where he's at.
Rich, welcome to Surviving the Survivor. For those who missed the top of the intro, Rich is a retired NYPD detective. So I got the best guests in all of true crime. From Mary Kolovich, and I really want to open this one up to STS Nation. And obviously we're staying on the story, and we'll come to you when there is breaking news on it. Likely we will do it again tomorrow if there is developing news. And just a quick reminder, our original story is the murder of Dan Markell, FSU law professor, and Donna Adelson's due in court on Tuesday. So we're doing a show tomorrow. Follow me on Twitter at Sunday at podcast STS, at podcast STS on Twitter, and on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. So Rich, is there an advantage to not releasing a name? That's question number one. And question number two is, all these photos are out here. Wouldn't one think that someone somewhere would have called and said, yeah, this guy looks familiar?
Yeah, I mean, withholding a name, it works as if we may not want him to know exactly that we know his identity, and which kind of, he may not, then look to hide even more. At this point, I think they know who he is, with all the tips they're getting. I know they got flooded with tips from people I've spoken to. And what happens is with that is every tip obviously has to be, investigated and see if we can find out, is that tip correct? I just think that right now the tips are very important. And I don't think he's has many places he's going to be able to go. With that picture being out there, what the police need now is, remember, this was caught on video, but again, we don't see his face. We see his face after. So what happens is detectives now have to, one, get him ID'd through maybe those tips. Then we have to find somebody that can say, hey, that's so-and-so. I know him. Because we don't have witnesses on the street that are going to say, oh, yeah, I saw that guy because he was masked. So it becomes hard to find a witness. So as Rob said, they're going to speak to everybody that's come in contact with this person. And once they find family members or maybe an ex-girlfriend or somebody that will say, oh, yeah, that's so-and-so. I dated him for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my follow-up, I don't mean to interrupt, but, this happened Wednesday morning. So this is really, we're into very deep into day 5 here, if you count all of Wednesday. And there have been photos out since pretty much either that day or the next day. I can't keep exact track right now. But are you surprised that in the last 3 or 4 days, with these photos being circulated internationally, that someone hasn't said, yeah, I know this guy?
Yeah, I think they have. And the NYPD is now just being very, okay, let's find this guy, let's locate him before we give anything out.
Interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So Tom Smith.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to go on that, we don't need, if we put his name out there, then we don't need the public. We do need the public, but we don't need the public to get hurt to try and, hey, here he is, and stop him or do something.
Yeah, got it. So it's a public safety issue too. So Annabelle Stealth here. This is an interesting question to me. Are other CEOs fearing copycats? Tom, I spoke to a friend of mine who's a Wall Street guy. He's been doing it for 30 years, and he told me that the companies now profiting aren't the healthcare companies. It's personal security firms like Rob D'Amico's.
I don't know. I haven't profited from. I got a lot of interviews, but I haven't got a damn cent.
Are you getting more phone calls, Rob?
No, yes and no. I'm getting a ton of phone calls from interviews, everything from Daily Mail. I did NPR. I said I felt 40% smarter doing an NPR interview. I'm like, those are for smart people. But I've gotten a few, but they're calling the big companies now. Just and again, the problem is you get some of these big companies and their executive protection folks are just, it's a clown show. So it is what it is.
Well, if I was an executive, I'd be calling Rob D'Amico. But Tom, I mean, on a serious note here, and we'll get into this aspect too. Twitter and other social media just filled, and I screenshotted something they can read later, with people who are, I mean, for lack of a better word, ecstatic about this, showing glee. I mean, not that they're not, trying to just remain neutral. It's like completely the other way, like thrilled that this happened. So I figure other CEOs, particularly in the healthcare industry now, have got to be taking a lot of extra steps in terms of security. And this might have to last a very long time. What do you think is going on behind the scenes with these executives now?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be concerned, and rightfully so, because you don't want to be caught up in this nonsense. And, a lot of the glee and everything that you talked about are the morons behind their keyboard. That's basically all it is. And, you don't give them the satisfaction of paying attention to them or reacting to their stupidity. But CEOs are going to do, their job, and these big companies, and Rob knows, they have their security teams, and they're going to ramp it up and hire a couple more and be more vigilant with traveling and not putting out everywhere you go. That's going to be probably a new policy invoked, if it's not already, in some of these companies, with not posting where you're going, where you're staying, where I'm walking, any crazy stuff like that. That's got to be toned down a lot. And that happens just too much in general anyway, on a daily basis, but it's going to be even more pinpointed now.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Rob.
I would say, and not every company has security. I would say less than 50% have really good executive protection packages for the CEOs. It costs a lot. Some companies value it more, but what we talk to them about a lot of time, like Tom said, there's data leakage, even though they don't think they're putting stuff out, like their calendars and how we had I work with the company has a course for executive assistants so that they can understand what gets leaked through the internet. They might not be advertising, but it leaks. But from what I've heard is, I think a ton of companies have taken down their CEO's picture, all the executive pictures off of websites.
CVS did that. I know CVS, the pharmacy.
Wikipedia pages have been getting, deleted and such. And they're starting to figure out how this happens, but it's going to be tough because that data leakage, once it's out there, you can actually search, the history of the internet. And if you take a page down, it's still out there. So depending on the level of people who are looking, but it's definitely taking notice. I think companies now need to really start understanding. I think it surprised the healthcare companies. They knew they were hated, but I don't think they knew how much they were hated. The fact that you have people condoning the murder of a father or two because he was related to healthcare, I think that even surprised them.
Yeah. And by the way, Rob and I have been talking all weekend. I turned to these guys, and I reached out to Dr. Ann Burgess, who's probably the best known profiler in the world. And then also Greg McCrary, who's entered the FBI in 1969. I'll tell you what they had to say, along with Tom Simon. I had all three of them on Thursday night. They had a couple of interesting perspectives on the new evidence that's coming out. But Rob, you were sending me what you were calling like hit lists, which is like screenshots from social media with different compensations. You know, this CEO is making $30 million a year. Does that make you nervous that these guys already have targets on their backs?
You know, I mean, it's a bold step to go from threats to actually a mission of violence. Though what you have to look at is same thing in like school shootings and stuff like that. You will get, I don't call them true copycats, because if someone's not truly planning and thinking about this, I don't think it's going to turn someone and say, oh, I'm going to go shoot a CEO. But if someone's already thinking about it, but they have to like the results. And the longer this guy stays free, the more like Robin Hoodish like thing gets in there. And people like, if this guy did the shooting and then was gunned down 2 seconds later, they'll be like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But the fact that he has this, you know, character of getting away with it and stuff, I think that goes to, if someone's truly thinking about it, they have to like the outcome of what happened for them to more consider it. So I think that's going to happen. Though I did say a ton more threats are going to come in. Because again, when you make a threat, you want it to scare the executive or whoever you're threatening. Now you can put a threat on it and say, hey, the same thing's going to happen to you, Mr. CEO, and people are going to take it more seriously. So those threats, I think, are probably tenfold, hundredfold now, because people are attaching what happened to the threat, and the companies have to take it seriously.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to Sunflower Lily, who writes, we love you, Joel, watching on a flight back to Miami. It's amazing that you can be watching this while flying, but I guess it is 2024. Chris Roach, this is a very interesting question, and I've never even pondered this question, but Rich, I'll toss it to you. And I was a reporter at Fox 5 in New York City. Why have we never seen footage of Brian lying on the sidewalk or being put into an ambulance? It is kind of peculiar. I mean, it was 6:45 in the morning, but you got WABC, you got Fox 5, you got CBS. This was a crime scene that was, you know, quickly cordoned off, and it was a large crime scene. What's your take on that? There really has not been footage of the aftermath of this scene. Why?
Well, I think as far as putting the victim into the ambulance, he was probably put in that ambulance relatively quick. I don't think, you know, he was lying there very long. The police were doing CPR to him and trying to revive him. So, you know, once they come up, that 911 call goes in, an ambulance is rolling right away. And also maybe the news, I'm not too privy on how the news will do their thing, but they may not wanted to, you know, show that. It might not have been the best, you know, position to show them at that point.
Yeah. Tom Smith, these are the two latest photos. These came out late yesterday. That reward is $50K from the FBI, and I think the NYPD is still offering $10,000. But these are clear shots. You see, obviously, the one on the left, classic, looking through the divider in a New York cabbie, and then the other one outside of a cab. I'm curious, Tom, the one on the right, how'd they get that shot, and how'd they find it? This is from the interior of a car facing out. Is this from like an Uber that they? I mean, how this had to come from the driver who saw this, right?
Yeah, it just could be. Listen, this guy's photo has been all over the place. You know, this driver, even if it's just a pedestrian, could have just seen him and recognized him and thought he looked similar to the suspect and took a quick shot at him. Everyone's got a phone, you know, so his you know, his eyes are very, very distinct. They're very recognizable, and his eyelashes. So that's something that could stand out just to the public. And that's the point of all this. You know, we all three of us have said it. Getting this out there is important, you know, because I've said it a dozen times, like Rob was saying on a bunch of shows I've been on. The police can't be everywhere, but the public is everywhere. So the more you just put this out there, it's going to hit. if it hasn't already. The one thing about this is all the questions of, why the name, how many tips have come in. We have no idea where they're at. And I like that. Looking at it from a detective point of view, I like that it's being held kind of tight, because there's certain things you don't want out there. If they're on a trail, if they have a great lead, you don't want that out there hindering that in any way. So at one point, we're going to, all our phones are going to blow up, and it's going to say his name and his picture and where he is and if they got him. And that's, I don't have a problem with the way that's done.
Yeah.
And
by
just
the
to
way,
add,
go ahead, Rich.
sorry, Joel. But on that photo on the right, those cab cameras, they've gotten pretty good over the years, and that could be just a zoomed in, because they want to catch somebody that comes in and sits in the front seat as well. So that's kind of zoomed in. That kind of picks up a wider image, so you can see people outside.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Rich, I'm going to come back to you in 1 second. Already, people are saying he's in Toronto. Well, someone else is he's in Costa Rica. Everyone's got the answer. Rob D'Amico's is. I mean, I think it's intriguing to everybody, because it is where in the world is this person? And I specifically am not gendering them, because some people, and we'll go look at those photos in a little bit, think that some of the photos look like a female figure, which is interesting. But Rob D'Amico, if you had a guess right now, and there is video of him speaking on a cell phone, and I think this is just prior to the shooting, the COA, you might be able to pull it up, but we got a lot of elements backstage here. What's your gut tell you? Is this guy working alone? Is he into vigilante justice, or is he part of a conspiracy? If you had a
I would say alone. Not that a family member hasn't helped him, but maybe helped him in not knowing what he was doing or something. It's a big step to get an entire conspiracy going. I always that's where I kind of start drawing back, but he could have been talking to someone, setting something up, and that other person didn't know.
And again, this is just a kind of a bunch of different collections of surveillance video and other video. You saw he was on a there's the shot of him. COE, can you go back on that just a touch? That's him speaking on the cell phone right there. By the way, Rich, if you don't know, the COE is the chief of everything, aka my wife, aka the executive producer of the show. Not to be confused with the CEO, right. But she is the COE. But there he is. He's talking on the phone. That's apparently right before the crime. Rich, what I'm most fascinated, I've asked Tom this, and I'll ask Tom again, is, okay, it's the 5th day. What is happening inside the NYPD right now? I think it's Detective Kenny, if I have his name right. He's the chief of detectives. But how is all this? I heard there's close to 1,000, if not 1,000 plus people working on this. How are they coordinating everything? Plus the FBI is involved.
Well, as far as Chief Joe Kenny goes, I know him for years. Great guy, knows the job inside and out. Was a great street cop. So right now, I mean, I've worked on cases similar to this, not CEOs, but a female Tessa Majors was killed at Columbia University, and this takes numerous detectives to along with Midtown, with all the cameras that are there are hundreds of detectives scouring every block, and they're not only looking at that day, they're looking 3, 4, 5, 10 days to see where he is and follow him, and that's time consuming. I mean, to put a number on how many detectives, I couldn't, but knowing from my experience, I mean, we would have every tour that we worked, every detective that was there pretty much working on it. So, it's all hands on deck. And so it's going to be that way until he's caught.
Yeah. Now, are there different shifts going? So like tonight, 2 a.m. are there going to be detectives at the NYPD looking through video and doing other things? And then
I'm sure there were night watch detectives that cover that tour. they'll assign, as well as something else going on in the city that they may have to respond to. But in the downtime, I'm sure they have 1 or 2 or 3 detectives assigned to watch video. I mean, me personally, in the Tessa Majors case, when that was going on, I sat and watched video from the housing project for hours, to look for the perpetrators. And it's, it's time consuming, and it can drive you nuts, but it's something that we all decide, hey, we have to do this. We have to find this guy.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because again, we have a detective on every Friday from the Houston PD, investigated over 400 homicides. And I was asking him, like, this is super tedious. Did you sit there and watch all your own video? And he said there was a time or two where he would delegate it, but it would never work. So he'd have to sit there and basically, I know a lot of you guys are, and I mean this in the best way possible, alpha male control freak. So he,
Yes,
he didn't.
When a case like this happens, that has to be thrown out the window, and you really depend on your coworkers to really, watch video. And, watching video, people may be like, it is what it is, but it's extremely important, because what I may watch for 4 or 5 hours, I could miss them. So somebody else would have to, you know what I mean? So you really have to pay attention. And it's very important, and especially in a case like this. I mean, this guy committed this in Midtown. There's a camera everywhere.
Literally, I heard
those cameras are very good.
Yeah, and I heard Ray Kelly, the former commissioner, used to work with his son Greg, but he was saying that there are 18,000 cameras that have been put into New York City since 9/11. So those are just police cameras and other quote unquote official cameras. Those are not related to businesses or the cabbie cameras or the Uber cameras that we've seen. I wonder if he was even talking to anyone on the phone, or just pretending he has, either to block himself or look more inconspicuous. That's definitely a possibility. This is Brian Thompson. This is a CEO who lost his life Wednesday morning when he was gunned down in the back, and his right calf and his back, but obviously the back was the fatal injury. Just 50 years old. Again, there are people celebrating this, which is just disgusting. I mean, this guy had a career, job. I understand the animus towards the healthcare industry. I get it. But no one deserves to die. He's got 2 sons at home who are probably, just totally shook, and upset and devastated. And there you go. Monopoly money equals company investigated for being a monopoly. We'll get to that in just 1 second. I got to ask you, Tom, do you recall anything like this during your career? And it was, I think, 30 years or 20 something plus at the NYPD. Do you remember anything quite like this? I mean, I can go back to the 70s with Son of Sam, and that was scary as hell and was huge. But what about in recent memory?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's high profile. It's New York City. Everything ends up being a high profile case after a while. But I've been involved in these too. We had, back in, it was probably about 03, 04, we had a, kind of half hand grenade thrown at one of the armed forces recruiting stations in Times Square that we were, on. And we literally, had to go store by store by store down a street or a building and check every single video camera that was there. And that's how you track the route of where he goes. And then once you have a line of his escape route, then it ramps up even more. It's just, it's monotonous, like Rich said, but you do it because you have to do it. But these cases go on a lot. Tessa, that case was one. Son of Sam, we didn't have the video cameras back then, but there's always a high profile case going on in New York, and the detectives who run it are the best at doing it. And it's kind of, you just go on kind of autopilot after a while, and you know where to go, you know what to do, you know how to do it.
Yeah, it's and by the way, I mean, NYPD detectives, and you're hearing from 2 of them, and a third who's from Jersey, so close enough. Very street smart guys, who understand the criminal mind. So Paul K here, Rob D'Amico, love STS. Just wondering, by the way, if you love STS, please subscribe. Please hit the like button. We've also got a Patreon link. The COE will put it up. Takes a lot to put the content out there. So, love to have you behind us in that regard. Paul K here. Love STS, Rob D'Amico. Just wondering if he did plan so, I think the word is meticulously or maybe maliciously. Did he lure the victim out via phone? How did he know what time he was coming out? I mean, Rob, that's one of the $1 million questions here. This guy doesn't keep. Yeah.
If I know what time his speaking engagement starts, I know what time he's probably going to come out. I mean,
but it wasn't starting till 9:30 or so, 9:30. So it's a good few hours before.
There's a breakfast before, but you don't know that he wasn't going to stand there for a couple hours. You didn't want to lose him and stuff. Did he call him? I doubt it, because then they would have the phone call. If you call him, like I said, you're now making an electronic movement that can be tracked. They're going to know what, phone called them and everything else. You can't just star 6-7 it and it go away. So I think, I do this all the time when you're setting up surveillance to watch a mob guy or another criminal or something like that. Or when I was overseas, we were watching some of these terrorists and stuff. You figure it out. You figure it out very well. And like I said, he got out there early. Didn't want to lose him. He might have stood there for 2 hours, but he wasn't going to miss him by getting out there at 6:45 or something. I don't think he called him. Like I said, that's going to make an electronic trail that you don't want.
Yeah. By the way, we're going to get back to this question in a second, but first I'm going to address this from Jean Marie. Whoa, that was brutal. There are so many people who have been denied treatment due to that CEO and his leadership. You just name called all those people. You are not worthy of that, jerk. Gene, number one, I bet you're still watching. Number two, I bet you're enjoying the show. Number three, if you took the cotton out of your ears, you would understand it's not what I said. I said people are celebrating the murder, which is 100% wrong. It's disgusting. I said myself that the healthcare system in this country is broken. There are two different things. So don't hear what you want to hear. Hear what is correct. And if you're celebrating a murder, go check yourself in the mirror. As the great Steve Cohen would say, you need to check up from the neck up. Please subscribe too. Thank you. And by the way, speaking of that, thanks to the CEO. She just donated a membership. From Jet here.
Didn't tell her to like the show, that to like the show too.
Why don't we see any video? Rich, another good question. I mean, they've been releasing video of the perp. Why haven't? And of course, my dear beloved mother, the matriarch of the show, calling me right in the middle of it. What she'll call again, don't you worry. Why don't we see any video of the CEO leaving his hotel or his path that morning to see if anyone was watching him? Also, there could have been eyewitnesses along the route. It was a short, walk. I think he was at the Marriott. I'm not sure if that was ever completely confirmed, but what about that? Why have they not released that part of the equation?
Well, because I mean, it really has no relevance to the public that they his whole path from the front door of the hotel. They're gonna the police are going to put out a video that is the most how do I say that they can maybe have somebody see the mannerisms of the perp or anything like that. But his walk from the hotel to where he's shot may be absolutely irrelevant and not have any value, to the public. There may have been at 6:45 or 6. There might not have been nobody there. So I don't think that coming out or using that, it's just, I think it's irrelevant at this point.
Look, Ray Weiss too. I mean, Ray Weiss likes to argue with me about a lot of things, but he's asking what's the difference between unplugging people in the ER and denying claims. One is an overt act of murder, and the other is the way our country's healthcare system is set up, which, in my opinion, is broken and needs to be fixed. And hopefully, if there's a silver lining here, that's the difference. Is that don't get me wound up on a Sunday, Ray, please. Supposed to be chilling out in the dog park, but I'm interested in this story, and here I am. So the photo array, this is another thing that's got everyone's attention. And we're going to get, don't worry, we're getting to the monopoly money. This is NYPD, New York's finest here, the morning of the scene. Tom, a lot of people just don't understand, fully what's going on in these photos. So before I ask you the next question, just explain. I mean, obviously they're processing a crime scene, but what are they, with that top photo on the left, what are they specifically doing with that bullet casing?
Oh, just identifying it, where it lands, anything that might be on it. Because all of it, you got to, understand every part of what the crime scene unit does is relevant, from where it lands, where it bounces, what's on it. All of that all means something. So it's all done real meticulously, and it takes some time to really break down, identify everything, label everything, because that gives you, the investigators, the detectives who are doing this, the snapshot of what happened. So that lays it out of where and when and how and all that, and may lead to a direction of, the direction the perp went, which we know by the video, yes, but you want the evidence to back that up as well.
Yeah. Look at this, drinking tea out of the survivor mug. By the way, the COE, and huge shout out to the COE, Space Coast, Steve Cohen, and of course the mods coming in on a Sunday. Look at there, right on cue. Space Coast from the West Coast. You guys wouldn't be able to hear this podcast without him, which is a pretty big deal. He does all the audio engineering from the West Coast, and appreciate the help. But this photo array, I want to get to this. Let me pull this one up. And these are, Tom, and I'm going to get Rob's take on it. I cannot tell you how many people on social media are saying that the two on the left are from the hostel, the two on the right are from the morning of the crime at the Starbucks. And I'd say like 50% of the people are saying that these are not all the same person. Would there be a case where the NYPD would, screw up, for lack of a better term, and accidentally put out a photo of someone who they, is not the suspect on the left, and the real suspect is on the right? And then the other question, of course, is why wouldn't the guy on the left have come forward to say, no, it's not me? That never happened either.
I wouldn't bet on them putting the wrong pictures out. I really would not. That goes through, before it gets to this point, a number of okays and checks and balances and all that before that's even put out to the public. But, I said it before, the more you put out, the more hits you're going to get. And I mean, me looking at it just, throughout the last 5 days on TV, computers, or whatever, I'm thinking it's the same person. I don't have a problem with the identity of him, or the identification that it's the same guy.
Rob D'Amico, you convinced that it's all the same person? And I got another one for you.
I do. Like I said, before they put it out, there's so many, checks and balances that they're, especially when you put someone's picture out. I mean, it would be horrible that they didn't, but there's something that led them to it, to put them together, based on everything. So I don't think they're going to make that big of a mistake. And I've heard now, my neighbor just told me before I came in and did this, that coat that he's wearing with the pockets is now selling off the hook online. Again, the society is crazy on the stuff that happens. I don't know if that's real or not, but it's going around that it's selling.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. By the way, they're also saying, Rich, to you, on the photos on the right, even on the left, he looks kind of puffed out. People are basically implying that he had different sets of clothing on, especially the morning of the crime, which would be on the right, where he was just able to kind of shed clothing as he went. Do you think that's a definite maybe, as our friend Daryl Cohen from Court TV would say?
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. I mean, he went into the park and allegedly put his backpack down, to hide it. But yeah, he could shed. I've seen people shed their clothes and have other clothes. I mean, he doesn't. To me, the camera angles too can depending on what angle we're getting the surveillance from, can make you look a lot different. Some angles make him look, he could be 280 pounds. And then you see another, angle where he's walking on the street, he's 180 pounds. Like you can't really go by, the angles and everything like that on this.
Yeah. By the way, Rob, real quick, look at this one. Yeah. People are getting a tattoo of this guy. Also, go ahead, Rob.
Oh my God. Tattoo. That's worse than like your boyfriend or girlfriend's name that breaks up with you a week later. But
yeah. Yes.
Especially if it's a wrong,
I'm glad you got that question.
Like if you put on the wrong, it wasn't that guy. But where was I going?
I'm not sure we ever got there. But Rob, let me. Go ahead.
So when you do surveillance too, there's quick ways that you can really change your appearance to other people. Hats and hoodies and jackets and stuff like that. So when we would do surveillance, even in a car, your neck up, you'd have different hats, you'd have different shirts, different jackets to put on, and you can really change it fairly quickly on just a couple things. Because when you're looking for someone, you think of something like the jacket or the hat or the hoodie or the backpack, and that's what you identify with. And as soon as you start discarding that stuff, when I first looked at this guy, I thought it was a crime of passion, and he's probably going to get caught pretty soon, because a lot of crimes of passions, they don't think past the X. They don't think too much further than running from the crime scene. But him, bicycle, taxi to a bus station, don't know if he got on a bus. It could have been I think more and more he had a better plan than we all gave him credit for in the beginning. And it's drawing out, and people are asking, like, how can a guy like this get away with 5 days of everyone looking for him? Mm-hmm. He got out of that surrounding area fairly quickly without his identity being known, without his picture in his face. I don't think he went airport just because TSA and but trains and buses and stuff. But once he gets out of that, if he went low to ground, if he had an Airbnb or something that he doesn't have to get out, that he pre-stocked with food, and he's not exposing himself to the public, it will be tough to catch him, especially if he ditched all his electronics, if he had his phone in a Faraday bag or whatever, because it sounds like he did better planning than I initially gave him credit for.
This question, I think, is asking if they put in a huge reward for info leading his capture. You think that would have been the best course of action? We had Tom Simon, who's retired FBI, and he handled white-collar crimes and accounting. He's actually an accountant himself. He said that the FBI has actually done studies, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know, but there is zero correlation between the amount of money and people. In other words, you can offer $10,000 or $100 million, and you're going to get the same sort of response, which is fascinating to me, but apparently the truth. So let's get into this, because this is the biggest part, the biggest new part of this crazy story, and that's this part of the evidence. So police, Rich, they were scouring, did a grid search of Central Park. I don't think they found this the first time. Apparently they find this backpack on a secondary or third search next to the carousel in Central Park. And they say that there's no weapon inside the bag, or at least no known weapon that we have been told about. But what there is this monopoly money, super bizarre twist, straight out of, again, a Netflix show. What's your take on the monopoly money aspect of this?
I mean, again, as we said earlier, is he toying with us? Is he saying, listen, he left a backpack with that in it. I mean, I haven't heard really what was extra in that backpack. I'm not sure. But I mean, people do some strange things. And as we said earlier, is it because the healthcare system is a monopoly and people are doing it? I mean, yeah, that's very possible. But I think this guy is actually very upset with the healthcare system and either family has been, not given the right care, or they didn't do whatever it could be. But it could be just he's nuts.
Yeah.
But that's up for.
You have to be careful what you assign this on. I remember a buddy of mine interviewed Saddam Hussein before he went to trial. He was the FBI guy that did that. He was on 60 Minutes. And at one point, Saddam comes in and he says, "Hey, should I grow a beard, wear a beard to trial?" And George is like, "Well, why?" He's like, "Well, I heard American women like beards, so I want the American women to like me." So he goes to trial and he's got the beard on, and all the news folks say, "Oh, he's doing it because he wants to touch base with the Muslims, and the beard is, the beard of truth and stuff." Well, no, he was doing it because he wanted American women. So again, like when you look at this monopoly money, it could have some significance and it could have none. It's one of those, like, everyone assigns it. It'll be interesting to find out at that point, but you may not know until after.
Yeah. Saddam had a lot bigger things to worry about whether he needed
No,
a
not
beard
with
or
his
not.
ego.
You should have told him he needed to color that beard darker.
Yeah.
There we go. This is another thing. Back up to Tom from Craig Brown. It was reportedly this was done around the time that I guess there is a shift change with the NYPD. But Tom, does that mean anything? I mean, there's tens of thousands of NYPD officers. So, I mean, it's not like they're coming in and out of, like a Costco or whatever, or some kind of factory. They're all over the street. So would that really have any sort of impact, in your opinion, on the outcome here?
No, not at all. There's so many units, especially in Midtown. There's dozens of units doing different tours, 6 to 2s, 2 to 10s, 5 to 1s. There's so many that trying to lock down one to commit a crime during some sort of shift change is somewhat impossible. There's so many units doing different tours.
Yeah. Here's another fascinating comment, but I'll put it up in a sec. But Tom, to you, what about the monopoly money? What do you make of that?
You know what? Between that and the shell casings, he may not want to be caught, but he wants everyone to know why he did it. That's the message. It has to do with money. And we had said that the other night when we were all on together. Money drives craziness. And this is just another example, but the message of the money and the inscribed shells, show everyone why he did it. He's just putting out there. He wants everyone to know why. Maybe not who he is, but why he did it.
Yeah. Look, detectives cannot rule out anything. Rich, what about this? Two twins is redundant, but what about a set of twins? That would be crazy. I mean, is that something that the NYPD is considered? I mean, it sounds a little far-fetched, but any chance that two guys who look identical are pulling this off?
I highly doubt that. And I mean, it would make a great movie, but I don't think so. And I'm sure, as I said earlier, after doing these cases, with all the tips and everything coming in, they probably know who they're looking for. It's just a matter of, and they're going to already have a family tree done and know who's, related, where he could be. We have a very good regional task force and all these guys that go out, and this is their life, finding people. And they do a great job of it. And I have to say, throughout this whole investigation, the video work on this case is amazing. I mean, they've tracked this guy for miles, and it's a great job. We don't have him yet, but he'll be in custody soon.
Yeah.
And you know what, Joel, just real quick, just jumping on what Rich said, silence is powerful. When you don't hear anything for hours or a day, that's usually a good sign, because that means, we may be sitting around just reading stuff. The detectives involved in this aren't stopping. And when you don't hear anything for a good period of time, that might be a good thing.
Yeah,
Right.
and I've noticed I haven't really been like the typical NYPD press conferences. Real quick, Tom, before you answer that, there's a lot of new people watching tonight. So if you've never been with Surviving the Survivor, we are a nightly live show covering the biggest crimes in America with the best guests, as you see right now. We've got retired FBI, retired NYPD, criminal profilers, the great Dr. Ann Burgess, Nancy Grace has been on the show, Vinny Politan of Court TV. So we bring it to you live every night, 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. You can follow me on Twitter at Podcast STS, on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor, and please share the show with friends and hit that like button. Even the one who was yelling at me called me a jerk. Latina. That's the COE, the chief of everyone. Remember this comment, Tom. No one's going to turn him in, but do these haters realize he's only been the CEO for 3 years? How can they blame him for years of denials? I've had United Healthcare for 20 years, never denied me. So that's another perspective. Tom, one of the issues here is there are so many people who are, I guess, for a lack of a better way of saying it, are okay with him being killed because of the position he held. Does this make it a lot harder for law enforcement because you guys generally do rely on the public?
Well, I'm always under the belief there's more good people than bad, so the good ones are gonna, help out and keep an eye out. And if they see something, make that phone call. That overwhelms the bad people in the world for sure.
Yeah. Rob D'Amico, no shortages of comments like this. I'm pointing it out because this is a reality of the story. Here's this guy's a modern day Robin Hood. That's another one. I didn't see nothing from only me. Just that's obviously in reaction to what I was just saying, that a lot of people are saying, yeah, I didn't see anything, even if they saw this guy, because they don't want him to get caught, which is, I mean, there's a whole psychological aspect to this entire crime that's just absolutely mind-boggling. But Rob D'Amico, one of the interesting things that has not been found, at least that we don't know about, is the e-bike that he was on. They found the backpack, they found the Monopoly money. There's a jacket reportedly inside the backpack, but where is that bike, do you think? Also, the weapon has not been recovered.
I think the bike's in NYPD evidence.
You do.
They tracked them down. They tracked it. There's no reason to come out and say, hey, we got the bike or whatever. But they saw where he dumped it. And they saw him getting a cab. They made all that. So I guarantee the cab he was in, they've processed the cab for evidence too. Once they, like you said, you put this many guys on it and they're going to get everything. But it's not, that's not a news feature thing. Hey, we got the bike, so to speak. But they guarantee they process it already.
Yeah. Kristen, thanks for the super chat. I don't know if most or all, but a lot. I mean, they're a huge healthcare provider, the largest private healthcare provider in the country. They also have the highest rate of denials. And we're going to get to that, the whole deny, depose, defend, which was, some people said it was etched, but I believe it was written on topic. Off topic. Thank you, Christy Allison. But can you cover the New Jersey drone? Yeah, that's also really weird.
I ran the FBI's counter drone program, and right now there is. I talked to somebody, and most of the night sightings are actually manned aircraft. Anytime people think they're drones, they have a confusion because the manned aircraft look like it, just because you can't tell distance and stuff. Also, it's the airspace is G, so flying a drone over it at the time, there's nothing illegal about it. I think they're going to put a temporary flight restriction over that area. And there's all kinds of systems out there that can tell you who the drone operator is, especially if you're anywhere near an airport. Those systems can go out. We could detect drones up to 26, 27 kilometers where the operator was. But from what I hear, most of it is the sightings at night are actually manned aircraft.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, there have been drones flying over New Jersey like crazy. People thinking that the aliens are invading, but I did not know that about Rob D'Amico, the anti-drone team of the FBI. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So Rich, back to you. More inside baseball, if you can provide it. So apparently, they're doing DNA testing on the backpack, including looking for hair samples. There was also a dive team that went into a Central Park lake, presumably looking for a weapon. As it pertains to the backpack and what's inside there, which is reportedly a coat and the Monopoly money, walk us through that. I mean, you've got people literally doing a grid search. They find this backpack, they see it, they stop. What do? They cordon off the area. They've got the latex gloves. How is it handled from that point into processing?
So at that point, once it's discovered, the officers are usually instructed before that. You find anything, don't touch it, alert a supervisor. They'll come over, and then they'll call the crime scene unit over. And they'll let crime scene handle that. And, being this case, crime scene probably recovered it, bagged it up, and sent it straight to the lab. They're not going to handle anything in that to disrupt the DNA or anything that might be on that. So they'll put it into a paper bag and they'll send it right to the lab. And I'm sure that bag went lights and sirens to the lab where they, did their things on it.
That's it. I did not know that. Is that protocol to go lights and sirens with a piece?
No, but I'm sure they wanted it to the lab yesterday. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's a fascinating little tidbit. Tom, back to you. So the New York Times did a super detailed timeline. I'm not going to go through it all, but basically, Joseph Kenney, who these guys know, he's the chief of detectives, and he's really the one running the investigation, not the commissioner per se. But the suspect arrives in New York City at 10:11 p.m. on November 24th. So they know it's that specific, that it originates out of Atlanta. That's not to say he definitely gets on in Atlanta. At the hostel, he stays under a fake identification. He always uses cash. He avoids conversation and hides his face, although there's one point where apparently he's flirting with someone, and that's where we see the mask, the proverbial mask, come off. Where's he getting money and food? You heard these guys say maybe he stocked up beforehand. Then on Wednesday, which was the day of the shooting, the gunman leaves his hostel at 5:30 a.m. They believe he took a bike to the scene of the shooting. Took him only 10 minutes to get to the hostel on 103rd, from the hostel on 103rd Street to West 54th, which he's hauling right there. At 5:41 a.m. on Wednesday, he arrives at the hotel. He begins wandering the street. 6:44, he shoots Brian Thompson. 6:56, he's out of Central Park, still on his bicycle. And then apparently by 2 hours from that point, he's on a bus out of New York City. I mean, Tom, super detailed. I assume that they're putting all this detail together from the video surveillance, but now that he's gone, what does that timeline do for them?
Well, it just gives you a point of reference of what happened. And then, once a crime like this happens, you start the prosecution process, hopefully for court. And you start doing that in the beginning of the investigation. You don't wait to prepare to make sure this guy gets locked in and have all his movements down until after you lock him up. You start doing it right away. So this is all, for the motive part and where he went and how they tracked him, making sure it's the same guy. You want a consistent timeline of making sure it's the same person from beginning to end. And I think they did that. And that's all to set up, the aftermath once they lock him up.
Yeah. I'm reading KCL's message here. The shooter could also be someone who works for a competitor who's angry at UHC's monopoly, or an unhappy UHC insured person, or a disgruntled ex-employee, or an activist against healthcare. I mean, Rob, again, you got to keep all options open here. There's also a lot of people who don't think this is necessarily a male. So Rob D'Amico, from your perspective as a former investigator, do you really have to keep an open mind about all these possibilities. And like, how does it not become overwhelming?
Oh, you absolutely have to. But again, when you look at, what is the most likely, it's a matter of resources. But then again, on this one, they have a ton of resources. So if you have an inkling at something, you can maybe throw a detective or some people at it to take a look because you have so many. It really gets tight where you have finite resources and you got to prioritize what you're going to look for. But most detectives, senior detectives, just know so many different things can happen. They just have this natural ability to keep all eyes open. And then if a piece of evidence comes in and points them somewhere, how to prioritize what they have to put to that like, rabbit hole, so to speak. So it may be like, yeah, there's a possibility that because he was going to testify and some Nancy Pelosi insider trading thing, that this hit came from that. And all this is okay. It's one of those, what are the chances likely? How much resources you're going to put to running that down than opposed to the denial of service, which is coming out and stuff. So, but you constantly have an open mind. You just learn, you've seen so many odd things in cases before that nothing shocks you. You might get surprised, but nothing actually shocks you when it goes a way that you weren't expecting.
From Helen here to Rich, this is a great point because if you look at the other shot, there's definitely two different backpacks, or almost definitely two different backpacks, unless it could be the lighting. We don't know. But Rich, if he does have two backpacks, how important is it to try to find the second one? He could have it, I guess, still.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, but from the photo on the left, with the strap that he has on, it doesn't mean that it's not the same backpack because I can't see the back of it, but it just could be that the strap is turned, and that's the actual inside of the strap instead of, the other gray strap. It could just be flipped. So I don't put much in that, but he very well could have two backpacks. I mean, I think they have the right one.
Yeah, this is a difficult one, Tom, and I've asked you this before. This comment, guy looks Middle Eastern or Hispanic. The estranged wife, Paulette, is Lebanese and Colombian descent. I did not know that, but again, it came out very shortly after that they are estranged. They live in separate homes. So, what are the chances NYPD detectives have flown out to Minnesota to speak with her? Would the NYPD just let the local jurisdiction handle that? And what do they do? I mean, do they have to go back and re-question her? Obviously, it is super delicate. You don't want to accuse a family member of a horrific crime involving her husband and the father of her children, but obviously you got to rule out family members, correct?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I would say someone went out there because you have to think of everything. You can't leave anything to chance. You have to think outside the box, and everyone is sort of a suspect, so being estranged, can they ask, to look at her phone? Can they do that? Sure. All that has to be run down because it's a big unknown at this point. You know what happened, but now trying to get into the whys is part of the investigation and interviews and all that. And, again, I've said it a million times, nowadays your digital footprint is the key to everything. No one does anything without being on their phone, online, or anything. And all that has to be explored. And I'm sure it was. I am absolutely positive it was.
I think I agree with you. And I think, we have to, as detectives, have to paint a picture, and find out what happened. And we have to, as you said, rule out everybody. But flying out there, that was probably done that day, maybe the next day, and have to be able, because they're looking ahead. The district attorney who's assigned to this is already looking towards, nowadays they look towards trial already. Mm-hmm. How can we prove that it wasn't the wife? that it wasn't this. So they're going to speak to everybody. So when that case comes together, they could turn around and say, no, we checked that. So here's our evidence that it wasn't the wife.
Yeah. By the way, this is just another example of how demented the public thinking is. Even if he gets caught, who's going to be on that jury and convict? Pretty much, I think almost every jury panel in this country would probably convict if there's sufficient evidence and it is the person. Just kind of warping my mind, the amount of craziness that's out there. Great question that came up, Rob. Why would he come out 10 days before committing the crime in New York? I think it was Samantha, someone along those lines, who was asking that question. There'd be such a bigger trail of evidence then. And as we see, they're putting together their surveillance video. They're obviously, Thomas said it and Rich have said it, they're going back more than just to the day of the shooting. They can go back the 10 days. Why would he come out so far in advance?
Well, I mean, the reconnaissance period, if you're planning it well, is important. Like he probably figured out the timing to get down there. He probably, like, again, his path outside the city seems to be planned, and everything else. I think you have to look at it. As he got up there, he wanted to probably figure out, maybe he didn't know exactly what hotel it was in, and it took him a number of days to figure out what hotel it was going to be in, and talking to like employees at the hotels to find out like all the different things that could be, different with where the guy was staying, where the actual stockholder meeting was or whatever. So it took him a number of days. So when you have a plan, the reconnaissance and the planning is the most important part. And obviously he did a lot. And so I don't think 10 days, I think it talks to me like staying in New York City for 10 days isn't the cheapest thing. But again, like when we start looking at, there was some money behind him, $300 backpack, all the change of clothes and all this, staying there for 10 days, tells me he wasn't just, doing this ad hoc, so to speak.
Rich, interesting question here. They come upon this backpack. Why would they not get the bomb squad to check the bag first? I don't know that we know that they didn't, but usually, again, the media is good enough that they would probably have had shots of that, because that takes a while. But why not, if they didn't use the bomb squad, why would they not do that?
Well, one, if they did, again, that's probably a call at the scene by the supervisors. But I sense that they could have had a dog there, a bomb sniffing dog that would, alert them to that if they really wanted, to check it. But I think at this point they probably didn't, because they were pretty sure that this wasn't an explosive device.
Again, people are asking, this question has come up a lot. Rob D'Amico, back to you on this. No reward money offered from Thompson's company, just a generic post on Twitter, not to mention the family. People are asking, what, if anything, is to be made of that? Would a company normally offer up money?
I think the company's just trying to stay low. I mean, there's enough bad out there. NYPD offered it, FBI, and like you said, Tom told you the amount of the reward isn't significant to how many people come in. And you, frankly, you have all these new, I think, true crime people, like guys and folks watching your shows and all the other podcasts are really digging into this and trying to help solve it. I don't think you need any more incentive. I don't think like, oh, okay, it's 75. I got them in my basement. When it gets up to $100,000, I'm going to, tell you who it is. I don't think that's happening. So, and I think the company just wants to make as least public announcements and stuff as they can, just to lay low, so to speak.
By the way, I'll go to the bottom of the chat in just a minute. If you want to put in triple Qs for questions for the guests, we'll go a little bit longer. Lauren Gurney here. Tom, I'm going to toss this to you, not Rob, but What other specialists do you think the NYPD will have called into the investigation to help on this? So I guess people or personnel that they normally wouldn't call in.
Probably not a lot. Everyone's on board with this one. But you have the technical response unit, Taru, with tracking down cell sites, cell phones, anyone who might have been using the cell phone in that area. I think one of the biggest ones is, the FBI jumping on board, and not just because Rob's on this show with us, but I think that's big because, they have the jurisdiction of the country and they can backfill, the amount of resources that they have with aerial coverage, with, the technical aspect of them, with their tech teams are incredible with tracking down, bits of information on social media and phones and bank accounts and all that. They're outstanding at it. So to have them on board to really, be backing up the NYPD wherever they may be, whether it's here, Minnesota, Georgia, whatever, the FBI has that reach. So that's probably the biggest grab to assist in this investigation that they could have done.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like they mentioned that NYPD detectives went down to Atlanta to talk to them, and NYPD is big enough that they do send their detectives out. Normally, a smaller department would have to rely solely on the FBI to cover that lead, but NYPD is big enough. But what Tom talked about is if there is some type of lead anywhere in the country, the Bureau has a system. Within minutes, we have agents driving to that. So. Like let NYPD lead the investigation, FBI supports it. And then if a lead pops up, literally within minutes, they're dispatching people to drive 2 or 3 hours in Montana when this one lead comes in, that get an agent out there to talk to someone.
This goes right in hand, Rich, what I'm about to ask you. Paul K with a super chat. What if he did not catch a bus, but used another exit in the terminal? So again, Rich's friend, Chief of Detectives Joe Kenny, told CNN, we have video of him entering the Port Authority bus terminal, but we don't have any video of him exiting. So we believe he may have gotten on a bus. Those buses are interstate buses. That's why we believe he may have left New York City. I mean, it'd be tough for him to go in there and exit and not be seen, right? So you're looking at all the surveillance. So, I mean, what's your next step now? If you're working this case and you're like, oh man, this guy just got on a bus, and there are buses all over the country from Port Authority that you can get on, which direction do you go in now?
So you start off by finding out every bus that's leaving and where they're headed. And what you do is you alert, what they're doing is they're going to alert every jurisdiction that they can to where those buses
have any sense
are
of
leaving. Wherever those buses are going, if anybody like either FBI or a local jurisdiction could get somebody to those bus stations where they're going and help us out, they're going to get video from those bus locations also. But they're going to get a list of every bus that was leaving from the minute that he walked in. They're on, up until hours later. It's going to be a lot of work. That's why there's, hundreds of detectives working on this.
Yeah. By the way, we do have the best guest in all of true crime. That's why Latina with it. Thank you for the super chat saying amazing panel. So smart day in, day out. Shout out to Meave Mo and Steve Cohen, who books our guests for us. So, Rob, another thing that's coming up a lot, and look, I know I've learned enough to know that retired FBI, retired NYPD, it's kind of an Occam's razor thing, which is the simplest, is probably the most likely. But a lot of people, and you can see, by the way, that he's got a pretty pronounced Adam's apple, which would imply that he is a male. But a lot of people are saying they think he might have a prosthetic mask on. Rob D'Amico, what say you? Any chance of that?
There's always a chance. Like I said, I was watching the new Day of the Jackal, which is somewhat entertaining, though that this 5,000-yard shot was a bit much for me. But when you do certain things, and there's cosmetic, things that you can put on to really change your look. I I don't think so, but it's definitely feasible. I know people who've been overseas, we'll say, and do this kind of stuff for a living that have very good, we'll say, ability to change their appearance, so to speak. But they're the true professionals that that everyone's suggesting it may be when it's connection to like the agency and other things. And I know the folks that actually do that, and this job would have been considered extremely sloppy for them. You wouldn't have any photographic evidence if one of those guys was doing this, but different day. But everyone wants to make that sound like, oh yeah, it's the agency or whatever. But there are cosmetics that you can use to change certain appearances. The nose would be instinctually easy, so to speak. But I'm not, again, it's not my likelihood, but you still have to go down that road if possible.
Yeah. And Rob, here's another one. I mean, the questions are endless. Could he have an accomplice and they left in a car? I mean, earlier someone said, could they be twins?
Well, I think they have him tracked on the bicycle to the cab, to the bus station, to Port Authority. So I'm not seeing something. And again, for them to come out and say that, I think the video evidence has to be pretty strong that they followed them from camera to camera to camera, because it took a couple of days for them to come out. So that meant they were looking at every single camera that they got a hold of, or was coming into their feed to put his timeline out like that. So you could say that, but I think they would have saw that if in fact that was true.
Blackwood Orr chiming in, one of our OGs from the Republic of Ireland. I don't think there's anything wrong with his nose. There you go. Rich, to you, also per the New York Times reporting about regarding facial recognition, experts in facial recognition who they spoke to are disagreeing on whether these widely circulated security images, particularly the one where he's smiling, wearing a hooded jacket, whether it's enough detail to identify him. What do you think? Do you think that, that NYPD's got to be using the best stuff that is available? Do you think it's good enough to help get a jump on him?
I mean, I've used it myself in my career. Used it, and it's, again, as I said earlier, with the camera angles that you have, you're going to get on that picture, the second one from the left, even the first one on the left, you're going to get hits that are, and when I mean hits, you're going to get possibles, but it's going to be hundreds to thousands of hits, because yes, there isn't anything definitive. I mean, I wasn't an expert in facial recognition, but I've used it and it has helped out a lot. I'm sure, as, and maybe Rob knows better, the like FBI's technology is probably much better than the NYPD's. Everybody thinks we have the best. Sometimes it's just good old pound the pavement and identify people that way, and through my career, it started out that way, where we didn't have video. And if we did have video, we had a VHS tape that was, we got from a bodega that was taped over 50 times. So, we didn't have the technology, and we had to knock on every door and speak to witnesses and possibly find a witness. So that makes this, the cameras and the facial recognition make this a little bit not easier, but it helps out tremendously.
Yeah. Tom, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this is what's sticking in my mind too, from Jackie Lyth. So this assassin knew within less than a 10-minute window that the CEO would be walking across the street from a hotel to get him at the right place at the right time within minutes to assassinate. The timing is definitely peculiar, that the location, the timing, just that he would know that this guy is going to be walking. I mean, he could have come from a lot of different directions. I mean, didn't he have to know what hotel he was staying at? Didn't he have to know that he'd be there for the breakfast? I mean, there's a lot of questions here.
Oh, there's a lot of questions. I don't think he knew where he was staying. And the only reason I say that, again, just my opinion, if I'm going to do this, I'm getting him right when he walks out of his hotel. Why am I going to wait till he gets to another location to pull this off? You know, if I know where he is, that's where I'm going to set up. And as soon as he walks out, I'm going to do what I want to do. Around areas, especially like the Hilton, and when you have big conferences like this, and I don't know this for sure, but just from past experience, there's a lot of signs: enter here, VIP this direction, breakfast at 7 o'clock or whatever. There's a lot of signage around there for guests to know where they're going. He got there so early. I'm sure those signs were out super early because of people showing up either to help set up, get breakfast, or whatever it might be. So again, this guy did a lot of recon for a lot of days, and to do it the morning of would not be a big stretch. If it's all right in front of you, you're going to know a direction he's going to be coming.
Yeah. Rob D'Amico, there's a show, the first 48 hours or first 48. They say it's always the most critical. Not to throw any of you guys under the bus, but I had a bunch of you guys on early on, like the Wednesday guys are like, he's definitely getting caught by Friday, which I agreed with. But it just goes to show you just don't know what these guys are up to. So, how important are those first 48 hours and the fact that they've ticked way by now?
Well, of course they're important because you have a smaller area that it can be. And then once he got out of it, it just opens up so much. When you look at these guys that escape from prison, they have no clothes and they manage to be gone, 3 weeks in the woods, because you just can't put such a tight perimeter on it. Like you can get, so the fact that it's New York City and he got out in the immediate area with, how many million people live there or whatever. They didn't have a good picture of his face until, what was it? The next day that came out, I think, the hostile photo. So it's one of those things, like he's going to get caught. They all do. But like I looked for Eric Rudolph a number of times and they got him 3 years later, calling out of a dumpster in an alley.
Hey, D'Amico, let me ask you, like, I know you have had lunch. I've gotten to know you, great guy, mainly because he's from New Jersey, best state in the union, although we both live in Florida now. New York, second best, maybe. Florida, third best. But you're quite clearly an alpha male, because I once posed a question to you, what do you do if a shooter walks into a restaurant we were eating, and you said that you would distract him, take a shard of glass, and jab him in the throat to kill him. So
I didn't have my gun on me that day, so that's why I had to go with the glass that was in my hand.
By any means,
the second time I had the gun.
The second time you did. So here's my question: how much does it you just mentioned Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber, but so how much does it eat away at you as an investigator the more time passes and this guy is evading you? Is this the kind of thing that if you were on this case, would you be thinking about it 24/7, unable to focus on other things?
Okay, everyone who's working this thinking 24/7. Every cop. I did an interview with a college student, and this kind of said the greatest thing and the worst thing. The greatest thing is that you love your job and you love what you do. The worst thing is that competes against your family, and you constantly volunteer and go in and get called in, and all you think about. I don't know how many times I was at his movie night, and I'm on my laptop that the special mission guys gave me that I can communicate to Syria in, and kids are watching Disney, and I am in the commander, and he's telling me who's putting missiles on. It just overtakes your life because that's what you do and you love doing it, especially when someone's been killed or you're going down that road. So they are living this. It's all they think about. A lot of cops have notebooks, so when they wake up and have a great idea, they can write them down and go back to sleep, so to speak. But everyone who's working this is just working it. You don't leave the job. This job you do not leave when you go home. It stays with you. And who pays for that is the cops' families. You never being present was something I heard a lot because as you're watching your daughter play volleyball and you get a text in and you're over there like this, or you're under the table and trying to answer a text. Just what it is.
It's tough, and not to compare in any way to you guys, because what you do is literally a game of life and death. Same thing in media. When I was at Fox News, if I stayed there, you got to hop on a plane for stories like this at a moment's notice, and that's why a lot of people in news either drink or get divorced or both. Luckily, I didn't really do any of those. But Neil J here. Tom, back to you on this one. I mean, this is another thing that caught my attention because I have tried to speak, and I'm very respectful of this, or at least I try to be. But everyone and their mother is trying to get the interview of the family after something like this happens. And honestly, I'd say like 9 out of 10 times it doesn't happen, rightfully so. They just don't want to talk. They're in mourning. This woman spoke right away and seemed upset, but maybe not in the way that you might expect. And everyone expresses grief in a different way. Again, this goes back to my other question about sending NYPD detectives. Does it raise your antennae at all?
Not really. Because like you just said, everyone handles something differently. The quicker, the better. Like Rich said, I am sure they were out there that night, if not the next morning, because it's fresh and you want the information that is still in her head about threats or anything else going on. You want to get to it very quickly. But as far as, her demeanor or the way she's handling it, there's no script to that. There's no book about it. Everyone handles it differently. Someone would have popped up and said, oh my God, she was too upset. If she was really upset. So that, doesn't really matter. But the biggest factor is getting out to her quickly with the information fresh and able to pass on to the rest of the team.
Yeah. I just want to pass this along. So I spoke to Dr. Ann Burgess. If you guys are not familiar with her, the show on Netflix, Mindhunters, loosely based on her work. And then Dakota Fanning just did a documentary about her life on Hulu called Mastermind. She basically helped develop profiling. So I asked her what she thought about the monopoly money. She says it is a symbol related to motive. What was the amount of monopoly money, and does it relate to a health insurance bill of someone with a grievance? That's interesting. So she's wondering if the amount that's in there, that has some importance. It is another clue. This is another option, that it's another clue to throw the investigators off. Number 3, it wasn't the shooter's backpack. So maybe it was just someone else's backpack, happened to have monopoly money in it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Let me tell you what Greg McCrary said. He entered the FBI in 1969 and was chasing serial killers around the world, but he was also part of the profiling team. He is, even though he's FBI, he's a cop's cop. Very interesting guy. He says, I agree with Ann, but I might add a sub item under number 2 of Ann's assessment. The monopoly money, he would put it 2-way. The monopoly money is an FU, he wrote it out, is an FU to investigators, an expression the offender's narcissism, an attempt to control the investigation by providing a false dead-end lead, he hopes. It's been my experience that narcissism often contributes to an offender's demise. They're not as smart as they think they are. For example, maybe his DNA or fingerprints are on the money. We investigators can chase a dead end or a mistaken lead every day, but we get to start fresh again tomorrow. The offender can never make a mistake. They do not get a do-over. Is he good or has he been lucky? Time will tell. Really interesting. I thought that was super interesting. Rich, your response to that these guys have to be right all the way through, cannot make a single mistake. You guys can make a mistake or two and go back and fix your mistake and still catch the guy. Is that a really accurate statement?
Yeah, I mean, going back with the money, yes, the way we're going to find out is about all these questions is when he's caught. If he chooses to speak to us, you know what I'm saying? If he's going to speak to the police, we're going to lay it out, and we're going to probably look back and go, wow, we were wrong about that. Like that meant absolutely nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I think that right now detectives are probably trying to figure out a little bit about what the significance of that money is. But their main thing right now is to identify him and find him. then they'll work all that out in the long run. So that's my take on the money. It's not, I mean, it's important, but right now, what is that telling us? That's not telling us that he's in Atlanta. It's not telling us anything. I mean, so that will be worked and looked at later. You know what I mean? And we may never find out, because he may just be like, listen, I'm not saying a word to you. And then we can only assume,
But the money can be evidence too. It could be just that his fingerprints were on it with the bag that was on it, and then
right.
he had a Monopoly game at home that was missing this much money from what's they'll put all that together again just to paint that picture when he's in court. Might not mean anything, but if he had it and he handled it, there could be evidence on there connecting it to the backpack that's in the camera, and they'll run that down.
Yeah. Eric Jeans here with the super chat. Thank you very much. To Tom. Is the hostel, this is an interesting question too. The hostel front desk woman, so she's the one that apparently thought he was cute, asked him to lower the mask. Is she not allowed to be interviewed? She could give details on the dialect. I'm certain the NYPD interviewed her, but Tom, the question too, when you watch the shooting video, which we're not playing today because it's played a million times, but there's a woman huddled in the corner that he could have killed easily, didn't take a shot at her, and there's an SUV driver right there. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that because typically you hear from eyewitnesses, especially in New York City, you might not hear from family members, but New Yorkers like to talk. They used to tell me how much they hated my ties. But if is it possible or plausible that NYPD detectives said, please do not talk to the media. We got to keep you guys tight-lipped, and they're actually listening.
Sure. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Any witness, depending on the severity of it or what they can tell, you don't want to, not even just putting information out there. You don't want them to be in danger. One of those witnesses could say, oh, I knew who he was. I talked to him earlier in the day. Who knows? But part of staying out of the media light is the possibility of, and just keeping them safe because of the information that they're given.
But also on that note, with witnesses, the media sometimes helps us with that, because the media finds a witness that we didn't know about. And then you start talking to them, and then we go and track them down and sit them down and get a deeper and talking to them, because, and it's happened in my career that we've had to track people down because they were an eyeball witness to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mary's asking, how far is the hostel? So the hostels, New York is basically a grid system, numerical. So the hostel was on 103rd on the west side, and this was 54th, and between 54th and 55th on 6th Avenue. So you just subtract 103 from 54, which I can't do right now. What do you make? This is Rob D'Amico's world. For those who do not know, Rob was part of the HRT hostage rescue team, which is very exclusive club in the FBI. What do you make of the fact the shooter knew exactly where to shoot through the back to make a kill shot? Do you think he did?
I actually don't think he did. Shooting in the back, like with the movement and looking at him, he took a well-aimed round, and I assume he shot, for center of body, which again is the most likely with the heart and stuff. But it can be it can be tough to kill someone with one shot. Unfortunately, the bad guys get lucky all the time. They'll shoot over their back, and it'll go in the corner of the cop where the vest wasn't, and it nicks an artery, and he dies. And you can shoot a bad guy 10 times and they survive. I don't think that was a definite fatal blow to a point. I was surprised that he didn't walk over to him when he was on the ground and do a truly fatal blow to his head. I mean, that like a mob guy, is going to do that hit, and he's going to walk over and he's going to put the last couple in his head to make sure. I think it was one of those, he thought he got a good shot. The second round in his calf obviously was probably not well aimed, or he was moving on the ground and he missed. But again, there's no really truly one shot in the back kills a guy, so to speak, because of what happens when the round hits the body. It can hit a bone and it can go out a way that isn't lethal, so to speak. In the back, in the center of the back, if you're trying to get to the heart, is the spine, which would paralyze him. It could kill him because he's fully paralyzed, but it also could deviate. So there's really no saying that, hey, he hit this one perfect shot in the back that he knew would kill him.
Yeah, Rob, just a quick follow-up. So I was laughing because at the beginning of the show, someone quoted Nancy Grace. Nancy Grace said that it looks like he learned how to shoot from a video game. I love Nancy. She's been on the show. She is the OG, but I don't think Nancy knows more than Rob D'Amico about shooting a gun. It's just funny that she would comment or opine on that. But do you see any similarity here from a video game, like a video game knowledge type stance as opposed to a trained stance?
Video games are so accurate because guys who've done it are helping the video game companies make the videos. We talked about when my kid was on there and I saw Afghanistan, and I recognized literally the street in Gardez. That's how accurate this stuff is. So a lot of them do get, if you look at the video games and how the stance goes, he's using two hands. Like I could critique the whole thing about where your weight is and such like that. But he may have gotten some from a video game, and I would assume he went to a range and practiced some. And there's talk of the weapon. There's this B&T, was it Viper 9, which is supposedly it's a veterinary gun to humanely put down animals and stuff. And it runs over $5,000. But the big thing with that is it does not function like a normal gun. Like you shoot it and it chambers the next round. You have to manually do that. I'm not convinced that this was that type of gun, because the way that chamber locks, you have to do a twist and then slide the bolt to the rear and forward. So I'm not convinced. It would, I think, change it if he's carrying around a $5,000 gun that's hard to get. That would change some things that I'm looking at again on his financial backing and planning for this. I do think still it's a suppressed weapon that malfunctioned because the suppressor changes stuff, but he was quick to alleviate. I would be surprised if it's that specific gun, just on a couple things, but I haven't really gotten that video and studied it, frame by frame to see if he actually was able to turn that barrel, the gun to unlock the barrel to chamber a new round. And the fact that the rounds, there's 3 unshot rounds on the ground, I think meant it's stovepipe, which is when a round gets kicked up and it locks it because it didn't fully function. And you strip those rounds off. The gun that we're talking about, the 1 round and you fire it, I don't think he would have had that same problem. So there's some talk back and forth that it's this silenced weapon. And then someone said, oh, he wasn't used as a suppressor because it's illegal in New York. Well, it's illegal to kill someone too. So I don't think he was worrying about the law if he's carrying a suppressor.
Yeah. By the way, this comment, I appreciate the super chat, SB, but I can tell you without asking these guys, they're not taking a side. They're investigating the case. This person's saying that the police are on the side of the insurance company. That's an absurd comment to make. There's no way that they're not. You see Rob, these guys have a job to do. They take it seriously. Are there some bad cops? Always. They make the headlines. 99% of law enforcement are on the up and up, and they do this not for the money, but they do it because they love what they do. Here's another one. Same person. That they're not on the side, SB, but I do like your upside down shot of I don't think that's New York, but I don't know what it is. So huge thanks to Rich Kaprowski, 30 years with the NYPD. Where is the 2-5, by the way? Is it downtown?
No, it's East Harlem.
Oh, East Harlem. There you go. Upper East Side there. So he spent years there and then became a detective dealing with cases from aggravated harassment, 2 homicides. Rich, final question. We started with this. If the NYPD does know the suspect's ID, you said they're laying low in terms of not, letting the public know that. But what are they doing right now, if that's the case, behind the scenes, and your final thoughts?
Well, I think what they're doing, if they have his name, they're working on two things. One, to locate him, obviously, and two, to get him positively ID'd from that shooting scene so they can prosecute him, so they can lock him up. Yeah, we could grab him and talk to him, but if we grab him in another state and he lawyers up when we don't have anything, we want to be able to grab him and be able to say, that's him, and that's it. Lock him up and prosecute him. If he tells us what happened, great. If not, then we put the pieces together.
Hey, Rich, will you come back on the show? I like to put guests on the spot.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, awesome. By the way, where can you tell us where you're coming to us from? Are you in New York?
Orange County, New York. Yeah.
Oh, nice. It's the Orange County Choppers. That's that.
I was thinking the same thing.
Not anymore, but
not anymore.
Not here anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Did the dad pass?
I don't think so.
Oh, all right. There you go. Tom Smith, he had a career with the NYPD as an active detective for many years. Now he's got a new product out as the chief operating officer of Impact Solutions. It's an alternate to pepper spray that the more than 80% female demographic of this show could use. So we'll get the name out there and have you guys check it out. He's also the host, as you see behind him, of Gold Shields, the podcast. Tom, same question. If they know who this guy is, what are they doing right now? And do you have a new time frame of when this guy might be in custody?
The time frame's tough because of exactly what Rich said. Number one, if you got him ID'd, you're locating him. You got to know where he is. And if you're waiting for some reason for the DNA, you're setting up the surveillances. You're watching him. You're all over him. He's not going to the bathroom without you knowing. If they do locate him, if they get all the DNA stuff and timelines together enough to grab him and lock him up, they'll do so. Rich's point of, being in another county, being in another state, you want this 100% gift wrapped and done because of what it is, the media coverage, the high profile case that it is. This has to be with a nice bow on it when it's all concluded.
Is there a chance? I guess the answer is always yes, but I was going to ask, is there a chance he's still in New York City and now everyone's looking for him elsewhere?
Is it possible? Sure. Anything at this point is possible because us on this side of the fence now are getting, limited pieces of information. So we're going to draw conclusions as well. Does the NYPD know where he is? Whether it's in Georgia, whether it's Minnesota or New York. Yeah. But again, that's another piece of information you don't want out there until it's done.
Yeah. By the way, a rule on the show, I'm not allowed to mention my own book unless someone does. Canine Catherine from Maui. I have a book out, by the way. Same title as the podcast, Surviving Survivor. My mother, people ask, what is the meaning of the title? She is a child Holocaust survivor. And the book is 15 to 20% her story of being saved by a Catholic nun during World War II, and 85 to 80% of her screaming at me, dropping F-bombs and giving me life advice. And she's been through a lot. So it's a laugh out loud Holocaust story, which sounds insane and crazy, but that's kind of what I am. So anyway, thank you for this too. Leandra Karamas, great show. The book, by the way, is available anywhere books are sold. And my mom did the Audible version where she refused to curse. Great show. Glad I subscribed. Thank you all. If you did subscribe, please hit that like button on the way out. We do have the best guests in all of true crime. Last but certainly not least, you've got the alpha male of alpha male, Sierra One Consulting's Rob D'Amico, served his country for 39 years. Did crazy things all over the world, including, I bet you can't say that you chased Somali pirates around Somalia, but he can. And he's in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere. But Rob, what are you looking for now with your trained eye? I mean, everyone here is just kind of waiting with bated breath to see, when they get this guy. But if you're working this case, what would you be thinking? What would you be doing? What's going on in that mind of yours?
I said there's a couple parallel lines of effort going, with trying to ID them. If they have it, and then if they have the ID and they're not telling anyone, like the mayor said, there's definitely things that they're doing on search warrants. Getting all his social media, his cell phones, and his emails and all that, and then you're gonna have to have a whole bunch of people start looking at that, and that's a line of effort that takes a lot too. Because just because you know who he is doesn't mean you know where he is. And then there's, putting other pieces together and getting evidence to get you new leads of where to look or where he may have gone. Like they're probably like Rich said, every bus that left there during that time, they're trying to get a hold of that bus driver. They're putting pictures in front of them saying, does this guy look familiar? Does this, and this? And if so, where did you drive? Did anyone get off? And but you know how many buses leave Port Authority? So again, all these lines of effort take resources. The lead guys are deciding which ones to follow more so. So, and then it could be the public makes a phone call and everything just breaks wide open. And again, it's that one phone call, and they're getting plenty of them, and they're having resources go out and look, and it may not mean anything, but like I told you before, when I work fugitives, Saturday night, like when America's Most Wanted, you're like, oh, here we go. Especially if someone was from your city and you're like, we're going to be going out all night, but you didn't blow them off because one of these is always right. And that's how you catch people. So they're following up on a lot of them. And I think one of them will be the one that, starts the pyramid of events that leads to his capture. Yeah. And by the way, Tom, I want to get with you on that product you have. I have 4 kids. One of them now is going to grad school in New Orleans, and I like it. That's my Christmas. That'll be my Christmas. One of my Christmas presents. I got him some other stuff before, but yeah. So I want to get with you on that.
My pleasure.
Rob, there's a final question here. Why would a shooter keep his weapon? I'm not sure I fully understand that.
I think he would keep it to get rid of it in another location besides New York City. Personally, like they got the divers in Central Park and all these other places. If he got out of the city and then he got to a river that they're going to have no idea he got to dump it in there, to me would be what I would do. And I would clean it because I don't think he had gloves on. So I'd want to clean it with, rubbing alcohol and everything else to get those fingerprints and DNA off it, and then get rid of it in a river that no one knows about.
I'll end it like I started it, which is this guy was murdered in cold blood. Are the problems with the American healthcare system? 1,000%. It aggravates the crap out of me. Oh, by the way, I'll get to that in a moment. But this guy is now dead because someone murdered him. And if you condone that, you've got an issue in your brain. As Steve Cohen again says, you need to check up from the neck up. Does stuff have to change? Yes. Could this go toward that potential change? 100%. Grumptown, there was a DOJ investigation. I like the name. How many other execs were part of insider trading? I think there was 3 others. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, don't cheer for murder. Cheer to get the system changed, and it's not by killing people. Huge thanks to the guests, to Rich, Rob D'Amico, Tom Smith. Someone in the chat reminded me the book right now is available as an ebook for $1.99 just for the next 3 weeks as part of the Christmas, Hanukkah holiday season. Thank you all for being here. Love you, America. Love you, Orange County. Love you, New York City. Love you, New Jersey, Florida. And please understand that this guy's a human being with 2 children. Guys, stick around 1 second.